Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Thursday, I guess, August 29th. And in a moment, we're going to have another a special occasion, another guest on a completely different but yet kind of overlapping matter from some of the stuff that we discussed last night. So first of all, thank you guys for coming back again today and every day. We do this Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern. And we cover a lot of stuff that nobody else is covering. And last night, I took a leap of faith, and we had a most thought and discussion provoking discussion that is kind of breaking the internet with somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 views from last night's show. So if you didn't catch that, I encourage that. But one of the best reviews that I've gotten so far was a couple of messages from somebody that I admire in this podcast space, a lady named Celtic Canuck, who was listening live with all of us out there last night. And she sent me a message saying that it was the best thing I've watched all year. Everyone is ready for a solution. Finger pointing at problems is getting old. This offers a path. So now that is in regards to what we were discussing last night. The Canadian people deserve to be at the controls of our future destiny, and there's a path out of the insane loop-de-loop-de-loop of the political discussion, but not to take away from that or anything else or our awesome guest tonight. We get none other than Michael Alexander joins us again tonight to talk about some high-level issues going on in Canada too, and some stuff that we definitely need to be aware of for folks that are just new followers or new to this channel. Michael, tell us, tell the folks out there, the 30-second pitch of who you are and how we've become friends, so you can kind of lead us through that, because I know people are going to be kind of jumpy for some updates, because we talk about Dr. Trozzi all of the time here, and that's where kind of the intersection is in all of this. Every week we feature some of his work, and before we get started on that, I want to mention that when we talk about Dr. Trozzi's stuff every week, never is it about Dr. Trozzi. He's never working for himself in any of that. So just to plant that little seed for the folks out there, give them the rundown.
Oh, okay, Wayne. Well, for people who don't know me, I'm a litigation lawyer based in Toronto. I was trained in Canada at the University of Toronto Law School, and in the US at Columbia Law School. And over the past 3 years, I have been fighting on behalf of doctors and healthcare professionals and others who are related to them, who have been disciplined by colleges and by governments, penalized. In some cases, their licenses have been revoked, simply because they decided to express a second opinion about COVID science and COVID public policy. This, of course, was labeled by the colleges and by governments as misinformation. And as we all know, it's a crime to spread misinformation, which used to be called your opinion. And so I am defending them on freedom of speech grounds. Freedom of expression up here in Canada is the term taken from our Charter of Rights. And I'm also defending them against various abuses of power that have been committed by governments and by the administrative state. And so Dr. Trozzi's case is the most important case in relation to those issues right now. And I'm taking that into the court system on appeal from the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, which revoked his license on October the 8th.
So that's a key couple of words there. You're having to go back on appeal, and this is a part of what our community out here is pretty well versed in lawfare and what that means, where the process is the punishment. And you guys have been at this for a while now, and one of the we never prepare a show here, and everybody knows that, but to help me get a little bit more up to speed, you made some points in our emails, that right now we're kind of down to Dr. Trozzi, Mark, and Dr. Hoff that are left standing in the face of this lawfare. And this really goes far beyond just themselves as doctors, but as you alluded to, the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression with which I am mortally afraid of, in this space that I live in. That's like, I safely say I see my assassins coming, right?
Right.
And I don't think I'm being melodramatic or exaggerating in that. So
Yeah.
this is one of those fights that Canadians really needs to get plugged into, tuned in. We need to dial out some of the noise on that. And you guys have put something together to help. And this is an all hands on deck matter. And I'm pulling this up right now so that people can have a chance to get to the link, understand the link that I'm going to be putting down below. But this punishment of the process is exactly how they're trying to defeat you guys. And this is how we can come together as Canadians to help keep Dr. Trozzi and yourself and Dr. Hoff and all of us by proxy, even myself, capable on the front lines of this. So
Yeah, well, Wayne, I started off 3 years ago representing 9 doctors. At that time, I was senior counsel at the Justice Center in Calgary. And I've had some experience defending doctors in the past against the colleges. So I've heard to recruit all the leading dissenting doctors across the country, who are speaking out about COVID matters. So I had, Charles Hoff, Mark Trozzi, Crystal Lutchku, Roger Hodkinson, Chris Milford out east. So, I could name more. I've also advised a lot of doctors behind the scenes on their cases and their situations. So at the end of this, 3 years later, we are down to 2 doctors who can make a difference in this. Everyone else has either settled, dropped out. I'm sorry to say some people have just, the pressure has been too much for them and they've had to step aside for their own mental health. So we're down to Dr. Hoff out in British Columbia, who is going to go before the College of Physicians Tribunal out there. So he is still within the administrative agency at that level. He's not in the court system yet. But I have taken Mark Trozzi through the colleges here in Ontario, the College of Physicians investigatory and prosecutorial process. And after 3 years, we are finally to the point where we can appeal Mark's case into the court system. And we expected that Mark's license would be revoked at the end of this entire process. And indeed, in November, in a disciplinary decision, November 2023, his license was revoked. A decision was made against him that he had violated standards of practice and that he was unprofessional and so on. And then in early 2024, they had a separate penalty hearing and they revoked his license. So we knew all this was coming. But why did we go to all this trouble? Well, we've tried to go into the court system with some doctors before on what is called judicial review. So before you have a final decision of an administrative tribunal, you can appeal into the court system on the grounds of reasonableness. Now, reasonableness is a very low standard of review for the court. They're mostly concerned with due process, which in Canada we call procedural fairness. So did both sides get a chance to present their submissions? Did they both get to put something down in writing? Was there any bias on the part of the decision makers? That kind of thing. But when it comes to the issues of law, on the standard of reasonableness, the court tends to defer to the agencies or the tribunals' interpretation of its own legislation on the ground that the body has special expertise. In the case of Mark and the other doctors, we're talking about medical expertise. The court doesn't have that expertise. So they're going to leave it up to them, except in extreme cases, to make decisions about basic points of law. Now, this all changed in 2019 in a Supreme Court case called Canada v. Vavilov. It's a very important case because it revamped our entire public law. And one of the leading principles coming out of that case was that if you have a right in your statute, so in Canada, we're talking about the Regulated Health Professions Act. that governs all the health professions in Ontario. If you have a right to appeal into the court system from a final decision of a tribunal, it's in your statute, then you go into the court system on the higher standard of correctness. That's the same standard used by the Court of Appeal and by the Supreme Court of Canada. So in this standard, the court will assess what the tribunal has done, in this case, the CPSO tribunal, and they will test every issue of law against the standard of correctness, which means the college must prove, the tribunal of the college must prove that it got the right answer on every issue of law. There's no deference. There's no reasonable range of outcomes on interpretation. You must get the right answer. So my strategy 3 years ago was eventually to get one doctor into the system, the court system, on the standard of correctness, and we're finally here. And I feel if the court does its job and applies the Supreme Court precedent properly, that Dr. Trozzi should be vindicated.
So I guess answers the question as to why the college is still proceeding, is because they've gotten away with it so far, and them being the highest body of authority that they have access to, you've now taken it to the courts, jurisdictionally higher than the college, and called them out on their deferrals to this body, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the college is in, I think, a difficult situation here. If I were in their shoes, I might want to settle this case and say, Dr. Trozzi, we're sorry, you've been suspended for several years now. We've obviously inflicted some punishment on you. That's enough. Let's settle this now. We'll let you go back into practice, take a few courses, and
we've seen some of these kinds of cases being won by nurses and other doctors, and yet others still, like Dr. Jordan Peterson, that have been and it's about that, making an example of them. How dare you? And they are fully committed to at that point canceling completely from the public access, like a Stefan Molyneux process, complete eradication.
Right. And it really, what you're saying, Wayne, is that they're interested in their own power. It's about them, their egos. And so they are not acting in the public interest. These colleges in Ontario are supposed to act in the public interest. The College of Physicians does not act in the public interest. It acts simply for the sake of its own power. And they do want to make an example of Mark. They have settled a number of cases with doctors who've said things very similar to Dr. Trozzi, but they said them after Dr. Trozzi got out there into the public domain. He was public enemy number one from the beginning. So they are committed to taking him down. But this could be a mistake, because if they lose on any of the 5 or 6 issues of law that I want to raise with the court, and the decision is overturned, that will represent a fundamental curtailment of the college's power. If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't want to take that chance, but apparently they want to do it.
Well, it's, I guess the best analogy my hillbilly brain can make is they're ripping the Band-Aid off of their own ugly self-inflicted wound, and now the courts are going to force it out into the public view.
Yes. I mean, I welcome this day. I mean, and I mean, that's not to say I think that this is I can't assume beforehand we're going to win, but I welcome the opportunity to really go after the core issues of law on this standard of correctness, because I think we win there.
This is part of that. When this whole process started and Dr. Trozzi was on his way to becoming the most persecuted man, and Dr. Hoff and those guys, I was here at the front line making that happen, because I was broadcasting their message all over the world, to the best of my abilities, within the abuse of our own establishments, trying to expose all of this. And this is one of the things that I understood then, was that the wheels of justice move so much slower than real-time reality. And so this is one of those things I have to remind myself even of sometimes when I'm expecting, and getting frustrated with, with the process. We see this warfare of the law, being inverted upon our own good, honest people. But this is, I'm kind of, I guess, assessing that we're kind of at the part here now where, like you said, you wanted to be. Now it's something that passively aggressively going on the offense. Does that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, I mean, we've been patient. We've been biding our time. I mean, we have fought the college very aggressively, up to this point, and we've done everything possible in that regard. But our motto here at my firm, Litigation Works, is very simple. The truth of the matter is all that matters. We argue these cases based on the truth. If the truth doesn't favor us, we face that, we deal with it. But this is about the truth of the matter, about the meaning of our Constitution, about the meaning of basic rules and regulations that govern our healthcare system. And we believe that these things have been fundamentally misapplied, and we are trying to right the ship and get it back on course. So that's our approach here. It's very simple. And my belief is if we commit ourselves to the truth about these matters, that's unassailable. It's the only way to win, and it's our most powerful weapon.
I'm 100% in alignment with that. And I used to, it used to be that, like the headline on my platforms, only the truth is going to set us free. And that, is only extinguished if we refuse it. And we see these people that go above and beyond to chase the truth, to push that, like you have with this particular instance. But this is the same kind of thing, or similar, I guess, but different ways of approach. And this is what we need to embrace as Canadians: the different opportunities of different approaches, that we are not helpless. We are not, as a society, doomed yet, because there are people like yourself. And we had Glorraine Blaze on, a Quebec attorney that's now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I am familiar with this, yeah.
So this is, you guys are pulling the band-aids off so that the world can see, and this is what's important. And this is why you guys have got hearings and stuff coming up soon. I guess that this is what is so critical, that's going to impact things. And we get to, you've been so far along the way, you guys have been able to document where it's broken every step of the way, and taken it so that you guys are going to be able to show the whole world that it is broken from the bottom up. That system is damaged and needs.
That's exactly it, Wayne. When I've been in the Supreme Court before, and I set this case up, the Trozzi case, but I set all of the cases with the doctors. I set them up in such a way at a very early stage that if we had to go to appeal and potentially go to the Supreme Court of Canada, we would. So these legal briefs that I produced and the oral submissions that I've made are heavy on the research. We are working from the fundamental principles of our legal system, the most fundamental principles as embodied in Supreme Court cases since 1939 onward. So we are playing for high stakes here from the very beginning, and we framed these cases in such a way that when we finally got to court, we could pitch our arguments at the highest level, because it's only by getting back to first principles and winning on first principles that we can change the system here in Canada right now.
So why do you think they're still pursuing this, Michael?
Well, I do think it has to do with the fact that, Mark was out there early, and he's been a real thorn in the side of the college. He has been quite explicit in public about his discontent with the college and its registrar, Dr. Whitmore. I have been too, but I think that they regard his attack on the college and its COVID-19 restrictions and guidelines as beyond the pale, because they're not used to getting that kind of criticism. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But overall, I have to say, I do have some trouble understanding at this point why they want to proceed, because they can sweep this under the rug and settle the matter, and they would be better off. They're gambling here. Should they lose, it will mean fundamental changes in how the college, in fact, all the colleges operate. It will mean fundamental changes in how the administrative state governs in Ontario. And so, as I said before, I'm not sure whether taking this risk, but they've decided to do it. Is it arrogance? What is it? I'm not sure, but I can only speculate.
Do you think, and this goes to I guess the ripple effects, the ripple impacts on people like Dr. Trozzi and some of the others, that we've talked about when they're trying to implement things like Bill C-63?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, this is just let me say, this case is bigger than Mark Trozzi, and that's not to diminish Mark and his stand in any way. I mean, we are arguing for a restoration of an understanding of the Charter of Rights, which has been completely absent during the COVID period. In fact, our Charter of Rights has been under attack by the courts for over 25 years. And we're expressing a view of the Charter, which is grounded in case law since 1939, a view of the Charter that restores the idea that we do have some rights that can never be, limited by the government. So under Section 1 of the Charter, the government can make the case that it should place reasonable limits on our fundamental rights. And and over time, the government has mostly won its case on those grounds. And so the Charter has not been very effective. That has partly to do with lowering the evidentiary burden for the government to make its case. At first, the government had a very high evidentiary burden, had to produce a lot of evidence to establish that its legislative objective should override a fundamental right, like freedom of expression, equality before the law, whatever it may be. But over time, the courts lowered the evidentiary burden to something called the balance of probabilities. So that's a much lower burden. So government can get its way most of the time. It doesn't have to produce as much evidence. But there's still a view of the Charter, which is, I say, based on our case law, and it is this. While the government may regulate a core right, like freedom of expression, it may not defeat the right. And you defeat the right when you attack its fundamental purpose or its core purpose. So there's case law to this effect in other areas of the Charter. This idea, though, has never been applied to freedom of expression, which is guaranteed under Section 2B. And so it sounds actually very simple, but the case law makes it very complicated. But we're arguing that over time, the court has said that the fundamental purpose of freedom of expression is to protect minority and dissenting points of view. And really, what the college has done in Dr. Trozzi's case is they have punished him, they've taken away his license, they have bullied and intimidated him simply because he expressed a minority or dissenting point of view. In fact, it's not even clear that his view was a minority view. But all he did was express an opinion, and that should be protected. And we are asking for recognition of that approach to the Charter. And so we are the only case in the country that is advancing this argument. Nobody has advanced it over the course of the COVID period. In fact, I can't find a case where it's been advanced in the courts over the last 10, 15 years. In fact, we could probably go back even further than that to find somebody who's done anything similar. So there's a lot at stake for all Canadians here.
I from my perspective, and I'm a conspiracy analyst, not an attorney. So when I look at the punishment leveraged against myself and my community, when we become the purveyors of Dr. Trozzi's opinion as expert as that's not what they're questioning. At this point, what they're doing is they can't allow you to set the precedent that he should be allowed to say those things, because then they cannot punish me for disseminating disinformation.
Exactly. This is for everybody in the country, this case. It couldn't be bigger. If we were to win this, just on the free speech argument alone. Sorry, I sometimes get, because I practice in Canada and the US. In the US, the guarantee is free speech. Of course, up here it's freedom of expression. Let's call it freedom of expression. If we win this, I mean, this will be a sea change for everyone. It will be equivalent to the decision, the federal court decision that the Emergencies Act was improperly invoked. It will be that big. It will be it will have a nationwide impact. And so as I said before, this is high stakes litigation.
On many levels. And now one of the things that there's people in our community, in our chat here, and we have a lot of different discussions, and there's a lot of things that we can find to micro debate on as to the validity of constitutions. What we have to focus on instead at this point is realizing that these guys are exerting full dimensional, unrestricted warfare at every jurisdiction and at every level. So when you're taking this fight, this is going to intersect with other fights that are going on in other jurisdictions and other avenues, and this is all part and parcel of the complexity of the fights that we're facing. Exactly as we were just talking here, that ability to, if they can set precedent that in whatever jurisdiction Dr. Trozzi is to be silenced because they don't like his behavior, on that alone, whether facts are there or not, and we look at from the other side of that same authoritative body, that if I then share his information, my business, my platform, my work is equally complicit, and I could be subject to house arrest because I might have a thought about all of this. This is a cornerstone precedent, I think, and this is why they fight this, or why they themselves are so committed to making this disappear with them as the setting the precedent. And this is why my plea to all Canadians, and this is why we've got you on here, is this is one that we need to take notice on. Dr. Trozzi is not going to scream to the mountaintop, say, hey, look at me, and come on my show and plead victim. That's not what this is about. He's busy doing Dr. Trozzi things, and this is why you're here talking to the community about how in this jurisdiction this fight needs to have eyes on it, and how much, what's the response that you're getting so far on this, Michael? Is there an ability for people to make an impact on this? Because the impacts, like I said, was just saying, they hit us from every spectrum if we don't.
Right. Well, we set up an organization quite a while ago now. I guess it's about a year and a half ago. It's called Justice for Medicine, and you've already shown the homepage on that. So it's found at www.justiceformedicine.com, and you can make a donation there towards this cause. We had a very successful fundraiser back in June, and we raised $10,000 in real time at someone's home. We decided to throw a fundraising party out in Burlington, Ontario. It was just great. But I spent that $10,000 the next week paying to have hearing proceedings transcribed. And so, as soon as we get the money in, it goes out the door, mostly to pay third-party contractors, because running this kind of thing is very expensive. We need law clerks and court reporters, and we have filing fees, and it just goes on and on and on. For the past 2 years, I've done this entire case pro bono. We have raised some serious money, but all of it has gone for these external costs. So we have more costs coming up in order to fight this. We're not fully prepared yet. There's a lot to do. So we're seeking donations. If people would like to assist us, they can go to Justice for Medicine, and we are grateful to receive a donation in any amount.
Well, we'll pull that site up again here in a little bit. I've got a comment here that I think I guess maybe I didn't address it well enough, and yes, it is. It's not a contradiction of last night's show, Python. What we talked about was completely different. And what we talked about was a path forward out of the corruption of the upper level of government. And what we're talking about here with Michael is the current war, that the current battlefront that is still in play in the courts. And until we get to a lot of those other discussions, we're a long ways from those. We can't just abandon all of the fights that we're in right now. And this is where, if we want to stem some of the horde of abuse that they have on deck for us, we still need to take serious action right now, Python. So I hope, again, different fights for different days, and that's the nature of fighting with both, both hands in different venues, and trying to keep people informed about the things that are going to cause the most damage, I guess, if we're not paying attention to it. And this is one of those things that they're going to use to help prop Bill C-63. So you're probably a little bit oblivious to what I was just referring there to, but Michael, we were talking about constitutional conventions last night and seating a de jure constitutional republic, or a different type of government that is not led by the monarchy and an appointee. But
well, Wayne, I would just say in passing, there are political solutions to all the problems that we're facing, and amendments to certain kinds of legislation. Now, the Regulated Health Professions Act in Ontario is about 100 pages long. I could give you about 1 or 2 pages of amendments that will prevent this kind of thing from ever happening again in the healthcare field in Ontario. There are other things. So, I mean, I've got a whole list of political goals that we could pursue, which are certainly feasible. They're not radical. We don't need it.
That's the point that I was trying to make last night, is we don't need to get crazy. We don't need to get, because I hear a lot of frustration out there in John Q. Public from every direction. They feel completely bombarded, and there are people that think that there's no political solution to this, or that it's time for a revolution and all of those kinds of things. And those are the things that terrify me most. But if we don't provide people with direction and a path out of some of these said impending disasters, that kind of thing is only going to grow. So I would love to talk about some of those amendments, because they all factor into exactly as that. There's no immediate, we're not going to wake up to tomorrow and push a button and fix any of this. We need to be open to more and multiple, and sometimes even some cases more difficult conversations, where that exactly we're not going to be able to have if we don't stop kind of what they're doing to Dr. Trozzi right now. And maybe I'm selfish in my fear, because I see that every precedent that they set to silence somebody like Mark means they're one step closer to silencing me. And when they're done silencing me, they're going to be silencing everybody else out there. And if you try to pass forward a message, it's going to be no worse than Orwell, where you're going to be under house arrest with an ankle bracelet because you said or did something that the government didn't approve of. We're this freaking close. And these kinds of things matter today.
Totally. I mean, the weaponization of government and the internet against the rest of us is quite extraordinary. We could never have imagined that a few years ago.
No.
And but it has happened. I mean, if we're not successful with the Trozzi case, we are not going to have freedom of expression in this province. But I would say we're not going to have it in this country. Now, if we lose the case, we can still try to appeal it, although it will be at the discretion of the Ontario Court of Appeal as to whether to hear it. And the Ontario Court of Appeal has indicated it's not exactly on board with freedom fighters and COVID warriors. So I'm concerned about that. But yes, I mean, this is the political dimension of it, is that we don't have a party right now. We have the Uniparty, of course. And there's no party right now that would advance basic reforms that would get us out of this mess. And so we need to, elect someone like Derek Sloan and his Ontario party. Max Bernier has a lot of great ideas. I used to be an advisor to cabinet in Ontario during the Mike Harris years. I did serve at Queen's Park. And Doug Ford and Ford Nation, I mean, it's a foreign nation to me. They certainly don't govern like Conservatives, and they're not open to new ideas. And they, of course, have prosecuted vigorously this whole COVID mess. So, there's just, it's difficult to know, where to turn. There is a political solution. If I were younger, I would consider going into politics myself. But the political solution is farther out. We have to think right now what we can do immediately. Right. And there are still some cases that we can argue in the courts that might get us out of this mess.
That are impactful.
Yes, impactful.
And that's what I it's a perfect segue into what I think is significant, and this is Mark Zuckerberg's admission in the U.S. This week, getting public. Canadians are not oblivious to the fact that our own government leaned on them for some of the same things, which is basically what the has again an impact on how we've all been treated, how Dr. Trozzi has been persecuted, and I think that this should have an impact on the case being that you guys are fighting right now, particularly if the court of public opinion adjourns itself into a demand of civil accountability and saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" I think this is as significant as the pushback against the Coots boys, and even more so because if this case loses and they get that justification again, every precedent they set is that much closer to silencing the people that have been fighting for that case out west.
Oh, certainly. It is going to have that kind of impact. And, we're in a situation now, I guess, if I'll show my hand, but this is not about left and right anymore. It's about whether we're going to have a new form of government, which I would call technocratic authoritarianism. I mean, it's already here in large measure, or whether we are going to restore our fundamental principles and enjoy the benefits of liberal democracy. And this is a real turning point right now. I mean, in the greater scheme of things, this is, I would say, a cosmic battle.
I could not agree with you more. And I spent a lot of time looking through the smoke and mirrors of why and how cases like this don't make the light of day in the general plate of discussion at the smorgasbord of dinner tables, is because of things that as you described it, a technocratic authoritarianism. I'm a little bit more blunt. The evidence out there, every bit of evidence is available to suggest that through foreign infiltration, through most of the cabinet, we have far more than 11 compromised officials in Ottawa, and they all need to be looked at for why we are implementing policy crafted by the Davos gang and the Geneva crew, and then being implemented by these people, and why this isn't coming to light, because people are only focused on the 11 that they've brought out in the mainstream media, and everybody's outraged at that. Meanwhile, they're covering up a lot of that because they're they can't, and otherwise they'll be exposed and you guys will be off the hook.
No, we are heading, it might have seemed fantastic a few years ago to say that we're heading towards a society where you will own nothing to be happy. But this is what the globalists and people in Canada influenced by them and in the United States really believe. It's quite extraordinary, but they believe that society should be governed by a technocratic elite, mostly people with MBAs who've risen to the top of major corporations. I mean, this whole idea of stakeholders, which has become dominant in business in Canada, it's an idea really pushed by Klaus Schwab and the WEF. I saw a diagram written up by Dr. Robert Malone the other day, and it really revealed something to me, because in this whole scheme of stakeholder capitalism, government is just another stakeholder. You see, because it's the corporations that will rule us, and government is subsidiary to what they want to do, which is essentially to grow richer and gain more power. It's pretty simple, really.
It was, I'm going to dumb it down a little bit more in my redneck hillbilly way. In my base understanding, by definition, textbook fascism is the merger of state and corporations. And through fancy word salad gobbledygook and foreign policy, they've been able to implement this as a chimera hybrid of the ideology, the far left radical, Gestapo boot type of intimidation and enforcement, backed up with the lawfare. I'm literally seeing history singing in harmony, but with the the benefit of technology and censorship, so that propaganda and censorship symbiotic beast keeps the illusion, the wrappers on all of this, and we've still got an uphill fight, and we're not out of the game yet. But these are the fights that along the way we have to bring the community focus and the attention and the lights to in a bigger way. And aside from helping, and the link is again down below, scrolling across your screen, folks, justiceformedicine.com, helping out financially. What are the other things that people can do to get to stay updated, to keep on top of this, to maybe find more dot connecting abilities, because as we've talked about here, the overlap between so many of the other fights, those are things that are going to matter moving forward in some of those other fights as well.
Well, we help build awareness. I mean, since a lot of people don't know about the Trozzi case right now, I mean, if people go to the Justice for Medicine website, they can sign up for a newsletter. We send out case updates and alerts about what is happening in the courts, not just in relation to my clients, but we've also published about the Peterson case, and so we're on top of a lot of things that are happening in that regard, and we try to bring people along with us and build awareness. So that's one way they can stay in touch. Also, Dr. Trozzi has his daily newsletter on drtrozzi.org. But if you want to know what's happening with the law and with Trozzi's case, just sign up for Justice for Medicine. We'll send you a case update. You can share that with your friends, and that will build a lot of awareness.
What's next for you guys? What's on deck first, second, third? Give us how much time do we have to prepare? Are there physical locations people can come out and show support?
Yes. Well, yes. Okay, I'll tell you. We have a fundraiser in Guelph, Ontario. Justice for Medicine has a fundraiser on September 21st. So that is, how are people going to find out about that? I guess they could write to us at Justice for Medicine, and we can send them the information about it. I don't know, Wayne, whether you'll be able to send out our flyer to people through your own contacts, but that's another way we could build awareness about the Guelph event. And then also, if people want to come out on October the 8th to actually see this proceeding in court in Toronto, they can. It's going to be at Osgood Hall at the corner of Queen and University at 10 a.m. So people can show up and actually see justice in action, hopefully.
Well, I know it sounds, I don't know, maybe naive, but we've seen through doing these kinds of discussions by people that have been in the fight for a long time, we've been able to help as a community, and we've seen the results of that, particularly in Alberta, in Eckville, with the Stacey's Happy Place case, whereas as the public started to get more in tune with it, people were coming from all across of the province and filling the courtrooms, and being wonderfully well behaved, nothing to be crazy about. But the impact of the public awareness alone kind of helps keep these guys in line a little bit, because people, they realize that this isn't going to just go away if they don't do what's right.
Right. I think it's very important, and particularly since we have a captured media. We have state media, obviously, in this country, and that's why we need alt media, which is why you play such an important role in this. And but we can't count on the mainstream media properly informing people. Whenever I've had a case, I've stopped talking to mainstream media. I won't talk. I mean, I did talk to CBC briefly a few months ago, and they actually, for the first time, quoted me accurately. But generally, I will not speak to mainstream media because they have consistently misportrayed me, misportrayed my cases. They've intentionally written up the cases inaccurately. And so this has been a big problem. And I just to to let people know how bad the problem is. I was not present in a courtroom proceeding. I wasn't representing a client, but the college was proceeding against another doctor. And the college made representations about me and my positions. And because I had briefly represented the doctor in question at an earlier point, but there was no need to mention me. But they mentioned me and held out to the court that I was an advocate for violence because I said that I would resist the college with private security if they came to the doctor's office again without a warrant. They had already rifled the doctor's offices 3 times without a proper warrant. And I said, that's enough, you know. And so I think any rational, lawyer would take that position, but they presented that to the court without the 4-page opinion letter that accompanied my position and that I did send to the college. And the court took up their opinion. I'm written up now in the court reports in Ontario as a lawyer who advocates violence. And so you can make your own judgment tonight about whether I'm saying sounds violent or not.
So when the last week,
and my point, just Wayne, this was written up in the newspapers as well. So this is
the good on you. This needs to see the light of day. But what I find atrocious about this is just brings that much more credibility when Glorraine said that she actually felt intimidated and her life is threatened, and she's in a foreign country trying to expose this in an asylum case. There are rogue agencies that have gone way out of the playbook on all of this, and kudos to you for not backing down on any of that. But that's when we see these cases that dare to stay the course, that is should be inspirational to everybody out there as to something to get behind. So do you generally have how much concern do you have for yours and Mark's safety, honestly?
Well, Wayne, I took State Farm US from trial to the Supreme Court of Canada from 2000 to 2005. They were trying, through me actually, they denied a claim to a property that I owned that was burned, that burned to the ground. It was a property I held a mortgage on. It appeared there was arson, but I certainly had nothing to do with it. Nothing was ever proved, but they denied the claim for specious reasons. They tried to use me to change the whole framework for the distribution of risk in Canada. If they had been successful in denying my claim and winning at the trial level, it would have led to a decision that would have doubled home insurance premiums for every homeowner in the country. So first of all, I want to get my money, but also this case, of course, had could have an extraordinary impact on the country. So I fought it as a self-represented litigant all the way up to the Supreme Court, and I got a unanimous judgment. Now, on my way to the court, I was surprised because at the Court of Appeal, I lost, which is why I had to go to the Supreme Court. And it occurred to me at that time that it would have been the State Farm's interest to just settle with me. Like, cut me a check for a few million, because if they go to the Supreme Court, they lose the opportunity. The insurance industry would lose an opportunity if I won at the Supreme Court of charging people hundreds of millions of dollars in new premiums. So if you write Alexander a check for 10 million, that's a drop in the bucket, but they didn't settle with me. And so there were two, possibilities of what they were thinking. One, they were planning to get rid of me, or they were just being arrogant. But at that point, I became very concerned for my life and had to take precautions. My computer was hacked twice. My hard drive was wiped out on my way to the Supreme Court. So they were certainly watching me. So I've been down this road before. And have I had concerns about my safety? Yes. But I manage those as best I can. I try not to be self-important about it. Mark has certainly had concerns about his safety. Mm-hmm. So
he spends a lot of time in public and saying things that they're fearful that we might catch on to and know. And I don't think that there's any accident in what they're attempting to do from any way that they can paint the board that we're people like you guys are dangerous. You're a dangerous threat to they try and tell the world through their propaganda, their programming, that we're dangerous to the future, to the people around us, to children, to our grandmothers, whatever it is that they can, that we're dangerous to, in order to justify, oops, oh, accident. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah, nobody's going to miss you.
Right. Well, my concern about this too is that, for instance, when I get invited to speak at international conferences and so on, they're not going to take out the people who've got the real COVID celebrities. They're not going to take out the people who've got the light shining on them. They're going to take out somebody in the middle, maybe who doesn't, is not that well known, but in that way send a message.
Doesn't get missed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have been concerned that I would fall into that category of the lesser celebrity. I have avoided some international events.
I'd be lying if I did not say that genuinely for myself early on, when I decided to get involved in all of this in 2019. When I launched my platform, it was a very conscious decision for me, because I did not want to fall into exactly that category myself. I looked at who was out there: the Julian Assanges, the Edwards, the Snowdens, the Seth Joneses, all of these people, and what was happening to them, and unanimously, and so many more since. That I realized that my own safety was in becoming as publicly notorious as I could possibly become. So we're not alone in that line of thinking. So I'm glad we got a chance to associate faces to important people, guys. You got to watch out for Michael Alexander here and have his back, and Dr. Trozzi's too, tongue in cheek, being facetious. But this is how we show them that we're not afraid, and we know what we're doing. We're not the uneducated clowns that they pretend that we are. We're not just useless eaters out here as a society.
Well, as I said before, we're aiming for the truth here, and so it's a test. And so if the truth is not going to matter anymore, then we'll have to make our own decisions about what we do. Some people might want to head for the hills. Some people might want to engage in political action. It just depends. But the message that I would want to get across to people in this regard is it's not over yet. And it's because people ask me sometimes when I'm giving talks, I said, well, why are you doing this? So many decisions have gone against us. And yeah, that's right. But it takes a long time to work through the court system. We have a strategy here, and we don't know yet whether we will be successful in the Trozzi case. And literally the jury is still out.
Well, and that's, I was trying to pull this up a little bit bigger so people could see it out there if they're on smaller devices or whatnot. But we have to play the long game in this, and that's really what you guys have done, and you've gotten where nobody else has gotten to. That makes you the tip of the spear in this fight moving forward, pushing it to them. It was Muhammad Ali was the most dangerous was when he was fighting from the back foot, right? And this is the opportunity for people to help in exactly that kind of fight. Some folks are a little bit late. This is in relation to the fights going on with Dr. Trozzi and Dr. Hoff and all of the rest of us out here that are needs to take advantage of, I think, Mark Zuckerberg's admission here. And that's something here, last couple of minutes of discussion here, I'd like to ask your opinion on, Michael, given what he has said very publicly now, and given the level of censorship Is there a case moving forward, do you think, for people in some capacity against Mark Zuckerberg and the collusion between the Canadian government in regards to lives lost, censorship, income, all of those things? Do you think that there's is that a light that people can look at moving forward in coming days as to something that if there have some skin in some of those games, that there's something to do?
Well, there's a basic principle here in law, which is that you cannot do indirectly what you cannot do directly. So if the government was working, in conjunction with Facebook to suppress speech because it didn't want to do it itself, it wanted, a third party to do it for them, then I think you've got a good argument that the government is involved in the suppression of your basic charter right to freedom of expression. So I certainly think that kind of litigation would have traction. There's also, it's very hard to sue the government in Canada. For tort, you have to prove pure negligence in the application of a law. But beyond that, you can only get government if it is applying a particular provision in a statute for wrongfully. That's for some purpose other than the purpose for which that statute was intended, with a view to harming somebody, discriminating against someone or a group of people. But it's that's hard to prove that the government intentionally misapplied the law. But if you wanted to move against the government for damages in tort, that there were harms that resulted from the suppression of freedom of expression in this way, you would have to go in terms of private law and damages with the misfeasance in a public office concept. And just off the top of my head, I'm not certain about what statute you might rely upon to do that, but I certainly think that you would have a direct charter attack upon the government. However, having said that, you don't get much in the way of damages for succeeding on in a charter case. So the Supreme Court, at a very early stage in charter, the development of the charter, limited damages really to a nominal sum, which is totally unfair, because that means it becomes financially unfeasible for you to go after the government for a violation of your rights, because you'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on litigation and you will never get damages such that you can, compensate yourself.
This sounds like a conversation to bookmark in coming days as more of this kind of stuff comes to light, because some of the stuff that I've been working with other highly talented and educated individuals over the last couple of years was gathering evidence towards misfeasance torts for exactly a day such as this, to be able to prove the premeditation on some of these agencies that our government has influence on. So
just let me go to the core on this one. It's quite clear that with the order that was used to authorize the COVID vaccines, that order, so it's a regulation, so we're talking about the law, that the Minister of Health used that order in a way that was inconsistent with its purpose. And in that sense, the government was acting in bad faith. And you could go after in the sense that, bad faith is also the same concept as misfeasance in a public office. So just let me explain this just for a moment. Given the nature of that order that did away with due diligence on the injections, it was not open to the government to then use that order to make the representation that the shots were safe and effective. Okay, so that order could never be used for that purpose. You can't make that representation because, given the very nature of the way the order worked, due diligence was foreclosed. And so no statement could really ever be made other than that these shots are experimental. So that would be an example of the government doing something blatantly wrong. And I think you could sue the government for misfeasance in a public office on that basis.
Well, I'm sure there's got to be something that at some point we will be able to, when I just consider the 50 some odd episodes of experts like Dr. Trozzi and Dr. Bridle and McCullough and I, entire bodies of work that they removed from public availability that would have saved immeasurable lives, and if that kind of stuff isn't brought back and kept in the daylight as testimony against some of these things, like when Zuckerberg says, that's exactly what he was told by the government to cancel. I think we've got something that we can chew on as public moving forward.
Oh,
So,
almost definitely. I think that, yeah, that's a case that can be brought. But as I've learned through working through all of these public law areas, administrative law, constitutional law, and so on, our system in Canada has been set up so that it is really not possible for most people to challenge the government in court, because they have just pretty well made it impossible for any kind of citizen-led litigation to make any financial sense.
Completely unaffordable. Right. It's not about right; it's about what you can afford,
right. And so it's difficult getting costs, full costs against the other side if you win. And the remedy for violation of basic principles of administrative law is zero, and the remedy for a charter breach is just nominal damages. So we have really over time, Wayne, been completely sold out by the courts in terms of our fundamental rights.
Lots more to chew on and all of that, Michael. Thank you so much for taking the time to give us an update, and we'll put some other stuff together. I know that you just before, for everybody out there, Michael and I had a chance to talk a little bit, and we're going to talk before the show, and we're going to talk more after the show, and maybe we can bump heads, and I've always got a cunning idea. So thanks so much, Michael, for the updates and the inspiration, and keeping us informed on what's coming next, and tally ho.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Always a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
All right, you have yourself an amazing day and long weekend, I guess, coming up. So look forward to seeing what we come up with next.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
Okay, another drink from the fire hose, and this is an important, people that have been following here for a long time, know that I go to extra curricular efforts to bring stories and people and things to light that aren't getting the light that they should, that aren't getting help, support that they should. The best people doing the best work are the lousiest at self-promotion. And again, for everybody else out there, Justice for Medicine is where you can go get plugged in, and down at the bottom there is you can sign up for email updates, some media updates, and you can help support the cause, and send them an email and ask them for a poster or an update for the event coming up September 21st. And on that note, guys, what a week it's been, right? Like crazy truth coming out faster than I can keep up with. I could almost do 2 shows a day. Some big stuff. And people are they're focusing the smoke and mirrors, and the insanity is getting much clearer. The insanity is Marianne, great question to send them an email and connect with them on their site for. I wanted to keep kind of eyes on the prize here tonight. It was about bringing some level of understanding of how important some of these cases are that nobody's heard about, nobody's talking about. Not to take away anything from anybody else and what they're doing, but this is it's like you said earlier, it's all hands on deck. This is unrestricted warfare being waged amongst us, and it's the court of public opinion that actually has the most sway right now. We're seeing it all over the place, guys. When we get plugged in and put a little bit of energy towards the same thing, regardless of what our main thing is. If we get together on a few little things at a time, right now, this year is the year that's going to make the biggest difference moving forward, because this year they're paying attention. After an election, nobody's going to be paying attention anymore. So what we're doing out here right now, everybody, is critically important, and trying to get as much truth as I can out while I can, before things like get any worse as far as for censorship. It's absolutely jacking up. And so this is why this is a community effort. Please help us get this out there with another share. Check out the Substack from last night. Oh, that's a scroller on the bottom. Losing track of me buttons. Substack on the bottom, all the receipts, all the documents, everything that we talk about. You find the backup information, everything to corroborate and for you guys to dig into and chew on. Last night's was monumental. We talked about doing, an understanding, a very different conversation than what we talked about tonight when it comes to constitutional law versus having a constitution. Very different conversations. And this is where words matter. We need to get better at understanding the micro of the discussions that we're being abused and beat to death with. So on Substack is where you find all the receipts, guys. Tomorrow is Bankers, Bandits, Bullion, and Bucks with Bryce again, 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern. Next Thursday, if any of you folks are familiar with Jason Levine, he's invited me on to his show for a 2-hour special to talk about exactly the conversation that we had last night on this platform that has raised such a ruckus. So looking forward to that. If you guys like what we're doing here, what I'm doing on my platform on Substack, you can, if you choose, throw a paid subscription on, but it's free. You don't have to. But if you find value in what I'm doing, I think it's $8 a month. You can support me in that way. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/whatsupc. If you have something that we need to know about here at the platform, more information, something we're missing, whistleblower story that we need to cover, the lists are endless. Send me an email at contact@whatsupcanada.org. And if you do want to help me out here, I encourage everybody to help out. Like I said earlier, the people that are doing the best work are the lousiest at promoting it. So whether it's this platform or another platform, help them out if you can. Right now, we are hitting peak crazy, and they're probably busy trying to figure out how to survive and keep working for you. If this is the platform you want to help out, donate at whatsupcanada.org is the best way to help, because there's no commissions, they don't take anything off of the top. It all comes to me to use to keep this show going, and that's crazy. It is what it is. So on that note, guys, I love you all. Stay Canadian, stay mighty, stay in the fight. Check out some of my favorite partners. They're not sponsors. They don't pay me for saying their name, but we are developing a community that the WEF Fourth Reich absolutely despises, working with the 8th most dangerous guy in Barack Obama's eyes, over at Patriot Switch. So on that note, we'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.